I've been living in my house on Clinton Avenue for 15 years. The garage behind my house has been dilapidated since I bought it. They just demolished it 2 months ago. The city did. So I say that to say that the city doesn't just get up in the morning and say, we're gonna demolish things. It took them more than 15 years to demolish that garage. What number is it again? When I bought it.
When do you go to school? Is anybody ready? All right, happy Tuesday, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. We are here for the regularly scheduled City of Albany Planning Board meeting, hearing, etc., joined by colleagues Martin Hall, Glenissa Gilliard, Shadi Kendevy, and Rachel Bridester. We'll now call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. Having established quorum, we'll just do a brief overview of the agenda. There are 9 applications that we would like to consider for, 9 applications, 4 of which we want to consider for consent agenda. The agenda has been shared publicly and with the team. I'll read through the consent agenda and then we'll look for a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda. So item number 1 is development plan review for 1383 Washington Ave, A2 Sun Holdings LLC, represented by Redburn Development. Zoning district is mixed use, community urban. The proposal is the conversion of 19,380 square feet hotel into a multi-unit dwelling containing 99 dwelling units. consent agenda, the actions would be to approve with conditions. Conditions being prior to the issuance of the building permit, the final approval shall be obtained from the Department of Water and Water Supply. And 2, prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall install the cross-access connection to the abutting property located at 1385 Washington Avenue. Project 2 for consent is a development plan review with waivers for off-street parking, a waiver for building orientation, a waiver for primary and pedestrian entrance, a waiver for facade transparency, and a development plan review. This is at 944 Central Avenue. The applicant is Chick-fil-A. This is mixed use, community highway. There are no public comments on this one. Again, the actions for us to consider are off-street parking requirement, building orientation, 2 of those, a primary pedestrian entrance, facade transparency, and the development plan review. The recommendation is to approve with conditions, the conditions being prior to opening. A grand opening circulation plan should be approved by the Division of Traffic Engineering. Prior to the issuance of the building permit, final approval should be obtained from the Department of Water and Water Supply. Remember, if we have any questions on any of these, we can ask them as we go along or at the end. The third one is development plan review for 442 Madison Avenue, the Madison Food Mart. This is for mixed use neighborhood center, conversion of a 1,550 square foot within existing building on the premises for light vehicle service to retail, convenience use, and the addition of 5 parking spaces. I believe we've talked about this one quite a bit. No public comment on this one. They are looking for a waiver for screening of frontages, a waiver for design and use of off-street loading areas, waiver for street trees, a waiver for lot frontage landscaping, and their development plan review. The recommended actions on each of those: design, the use of off-street loading areas, approve. The waiver for the frontages is actually not required, and for the development plan we would be approving. The last, I believe, of the 4 on the consent agenda is development plan review for 879 Madison Avenue, which is the Hope House, mixed use neighborhood center. The proposal is to convert 7,174 square feet structure into a medical clinic and a multi-unit dwelling containing 7 dwelling units. Our actions under consideration are a waiver for outdoor lighting, a waiver for off-street parking layout dimensions, a waiver for screening of adjacent lots, a waiver for screening of frontages, a waiver for vegetative coverage, a waiver for snow storage areas, a waiver for buffering requirements, and also the approval of the development plan. The recommendations are to approve the off-street parking layout dimensions. It's not required for the waiver for outdoor lighting, screening of adjacent lots, screening of frontages, vegetative cover, snow storage areas, buffering requirements, and then finally will be to approve the development plan review. Is there a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda as read? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Member Brewster and seconded by Member Hall to accept the consent agenda. Do we have any questions on the motion? Council and staff, are we pleased with the motion and is it in order? Absolutely. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose say no. Motion carried. The consent agenda has been approved. So if anybody has, I think that was 1383 Washington Ave, 944 Central Ave, 442 Madison Ave, and 879 Madison Ave. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We got half the room.
Do we want to do this now last? Okay. Looking at conditional use project and development plan review for project 00411, which is 257 South Pearl Street, Capital City Rescue Mission. Hirschberg and Hirschberg is a representing agent. This is mixed use, form-based, south end, construction of a 31,460 square foot building in service of a group living other use. Our actions today are for determination of completeness and adequacy of the submitted draft environmental impact statement. There's no comment and review on this one, is there? Alright, so this is all on us. Visit what we did last. So we have the resolution as part of our package and big huge binder that we get as a part of this, so is there a motion for determination of completeness and adequacy of the submitted draft, the environmental impact statement?
I'm not understanding the motion. Say that again. That's why I'm hesitating.
Gotcha. Hold on, I wanna get this, we gotta get this verbiage down. We don't wanna get in any fights later. I'm gonna read our other business. On tonight's other business agenda, we had the matter of the Capital City Rescue Mission proposal to demolish the structure within the historic district. Combine several lots, construct the 31,460 square foot building, 4-story building addition to the existing building located at 257 South Pearl Street, creating 68,000 square feet of building. The planning board is acting as the lead agency for the State Environmental Quality Review, SEQRA, of this project, having previously made a positive declaration and requested preparation of a draft environmental impact statement. The board previously deemed on October 11, 2023, that the DEIS draft environmental impact statement submission incomplete and inadequate for public review by resolution on November 14th, 2023, and consistent with SEQRA, provided a list of identified deficiencies. The applicant has since submitted a document entitled Amendment 1, which was previously considered at a meeting of the board on April 11th. At that meeting, the board made a motion to accept the draft environmental impact statement Amendment 1 as complete, but the motions failed by a vote of 5-0 vote. The board then adopted a motion that it seek advice of council as to how to proceed. Upon review of the submitted Amendment 1 and subsequent discussion with council, the DEIS was submitted and has supplemented and as supplemented remains incomplete and inadequate for public review. We have a proposed resolution that all board members have had sufficient opportunity to review to this effect. Has everyone had a chance to review the proposed resolution?
Yes.
That was what was attached for today. Is there any further input or discussion on the matter by the board? Thank you. Hearing none, do any members wish to offer a motion for consideration?
I'm trying to think how to phrase it. I'm assuming what the hope is that we adopt this resolution. So when saying that, I move that we adopt the resolution as attached to our board packet. Do we have to read the resolution verbatim into the record?
There's a motion by Glenissa. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Glenissa Gilliard. I'll restate the motion. Move to approve the resolution that was attached as attachment 1, and we will incorporate it into by reference, and it was determined that it's submitted by the DEIS, inclusive of amendment 1, the motion. So it is to be incomplete and inadequate. That's a key piece.
Yes.
I want to articulate that. And
that we
to commence public review.
we uphold.
Motion in order,
Yeah.
and it's been seconded. Thank you. That being said, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. In the hearing. All right, we're moving to the hearing agenda. This is for a conditional use permit and development plan of 124 through 133 Henry Johnson Boulevard. 238, 241, 242, 248, 250 First Street, 180, 331, 333, 337 Clinton Avenue, with the applicant Home Leasing. Avella Associates, are you here to present today?
Yes.
Please come to a cozy little chair so we can discuss your proposal for the construction of 42,903 square feet mixed-use building to accommodate 38 dwelling units and 2,550 square feet of general retail space at the corner of Henry Johnson and First. Construction of 5 townhomes with 2 dwelling units in each along Henry Johnson Boulevard. Demolition of an existing building at 180 Clinton Avenue. Construction of 4 townhouses with 3 dwelling units each. We don't have any action today, but we look forward to hearing and seeing your plans.
Thank you. My name is Adam Driscoll with Home Leasing. Good evening and thank you for your time tonight. Just a quick little update from my end, and then I'll hand it off to Nick from Avella. Since our last meeting, we have continued communicating with local stakeholders about our proposed project. I had attended a Sheridan Hollow and West Hill West End Steering Committee for Neighborhood Revitalization meeting, and our proposal was well received, and there was excitement for the project. We have also spoken with HCR about our proposal, and they are also have shown excitement. Our design team has had discussions with town staff related to the department comments from the different departments since our last time we were here, and we feel we have addressed the majority, not all of the comments, and are continuing to work on that. We do understand one of the requirements needed to be able to take the next step in the local approval process is the archaeological reports on the parcels, which are underway and should be complete by the end of this month. And our preliminary feedback is that there hasn't been any issues or discoveries or anything like that. And also an update on the Taylorama site, 180 Clinton Avenue. We had applied to the BCP program with the DEC, and there's a lot of acronyms, and they said, we are accepting your application, and we went to the next step, which is the 30-day comment period, which is completed, and now we're waiting. We just actually reached out to the DEC for feedback on that application, which would be great. And then I think this is new since we were here last, the corner just down the road from here of Henry Johnson and First Street. There was some contamination discovered in the soils, and I apologize, I can't speak intelligently to what it was, but we spoke with the DEC about becoming a candidate as well into the BCP program for that parcel of sites. It's complicated because there's so many different sites, and it might only be, we're trying to make it so it's the entire parcel. But they gave us some favorable feedback saying that we should continue our application, and that we would have a good chance into the BCP program. So I just wanted to make sure that we had shared that as well. And unless there's any other questions for me, I would like to hand it off to Nick from Labella, because he can speak much more intelligently about the logistics of the site application.
BCP is Brownfield, right?
Yes.
Good evening, Nicholas Vanvis, with Labella Associates, agent for the applicant. Actually, Adam, I don't really have anything to add. You covered everything that we really wanted to provide here. As far as updating, just kind of backing up what Adam had said about the discussions we've had with city's departments. We are in review with the departments. We have provided updated plans. That was just last week, I believe. For additional review, there's a couple items that just for the sake of brevity we had to leave out, but we are continuing all these consultations, and we will continue to work with the departments over the next month or so to address the remainder of their comments. So if there are any specific questions regarding any of the technical aspects, then I'm happy to address those.
So I see you have, is it our turn? Sorry. Okay.
We know this, it's all you.
So I see you have mixed use between retail space and apartments. Can you explain a little bit about who you're renting to?
We don't have a tenant that is currently interested, but we've had discussions with some of the neighborhood groups as well as other local stakeholders to please, if you have anybody that's talking about needing space, I think it's roughly 2,000 square feet, two different spaces, but we're trying to spread the word as much as possible to serve the neighborhood, which is something we feel very strongly about. What that use is could be, we're not really sure, but we want to make sure that we do the proper marketing so that we really are able to have one or two tenants, for that matter, that are serving the neighborhood.
And more on your residential tenants, I'm familiar with your group. Are you continuing to do that as affordable housing?
100% affordable housing.
Okay. And I know a lot of the groups and some of the concerns that they have and continue to articulate is and me being your neighbor, is the screening of the tenants and the issues that they've had with the tenants. A lot of quality of life issues, noise, not picking up after their dogs or having their dogs on the leash. In front of my house 2 months ago, a young lady decided that she wanted to plow into another car, which I have the video of if you wanna see. Plow into another car, you know, for whatever reason. Both of them were your tenants. These are the quality of life issues that, you know, my neighbors and I have complained about since moving people in, and they're not getting addressed in a way that's meaningful. And so, you know, it's not about the fact that it's affordable, it's about people who wanting to live there and help make the neighborhood be what it is. I'm from Albany, I grew up in Arbor Hill, grew up in the South End. I knew Arbor Hill to be a community. And it can be if you have the right people with the right mindset there. And that's what we as the homeowners would like to see, especially since you're doing a lot of the rental work in these spaces. So the question is it gonna be more of the same? Or will there be actual, not lip service, but implemented change? So the neighborhood can be a great neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a great and tough question. We really try to manage our residents as best as we can. We're definitely not perfect, and there's big challenges in property management, no matter you know, what the population is. And one thing I would say is, and maybe we can just look at your agenda, maybe this is something where at our next meeting, if it was allowed, I guess, and okay, maybe we could bring our regional manager with us, Nicole Davis, and Tammy Angel is also the community leader. They take great pride in what they do. It's just it's difficult. You get one resident that doesn't want to follow the rules, and it's not that it doesn't get addressed maybe per se, but they don't listen sometimes. But all I have to say is we want it to be a better neighborhood as well. We are very invested in this neighborhood in Albany, and will continue to be. And I don't know if this helps or not, but if there's ever any issues with yourself or your neighbors, our leasing office is at 259 Clinton, or you could email me and I can put you in touch as email, whatever the best way to do it is. We want to make it better. We won't ignore it, but we'll definitely be responsive. And I apologize if that hasn't been that way in the past, but we are we're definitely here to help if we can. Please reach out, you know, as we can put you in touch with our community leader and our regional, but it's a challenge, right? Property management is a challenge, and we're not going to deny that.
Yeah, and we understand that like not every tenant's going to be perfect. It's just it's overwhelming.
And if you get just one that it doesn't care for their property, doesn't care about the rules, it wreaks havoc.
Yeah, definitely. But if you wanna see the video, I don't know if anything's been done. I believe the young lady in still lives in your building. But it's horrific and it's horrible. I'm more than happy to share it with you after.
Any other questions from the board? For context, on the frontage, say Clinton Avenue between Henry Johnson and just across street at your house, Swan,
Yeah.
do you own greater than 50% of the units? Are they managed by you, owned by you, and that block, do you know?
Yeah.
Which block, sorry?
Clinton Avenue, the frontage on Clinton Avenue, so that would be north and south, in between east and west on Henry Johnson and Swan.
Go ahead, John.
Swan is where the store is.
Right.
You have the school, or the church or school, whatever, you guys have that. You guys have a little bit past Swan, on both sides, going down to, Hudson, I think it is. Down that way as well, and then they up a little bit between like Dove and Swan, not so much, but close to Henry Johnson, there's more.
And I can't say what the percentage is, I don't know.
But they'll have a large, they're gonna be the,
Well, seeing how this is, I'm assuming you'll be back to present at a later date, I'd like to know that.
Okay.
Any comments from staff on this one?
So I broke it up between the 3 different DPRs or development plan reviews. So the first one in our numerical order is the Henry Johnson Boulevard townhouses. Just a quick overview is that it meets dimensional standards, it's below maximum impervious surface coverage. We expect a lot line modification application, which doesn't need to be done prior to site plan review, just prior to building permit issuance. Because there's currently 8 parcels, so there'll need to be some modification there. Townhouse as a use requires 0 parking spaces, but they're proposing 16 spaces in an off-street parking lot with access via First Street. 1 ADA and 1 EV charging space included. Kind of goes into more depth in the staff memo, but just overview, it does comply with landscaping and buffering as far as being adjacent to residential uses and streetscape design and outdoor lighting. Seeker review is for the project as a whole, which includes these 3 major DPRs as well as additional minor DPRs. So it's DPR 0202 through 0209. That's the entire project. So quite a few. So if the seeker covers that entire overview. So that's ongoing as well as the departmental review, which we've touched on. I think water department is probably the most outstanding comments, which I know Lavella is working with kind of directly. Engineering and DGS are relatively minimal, just kind of some few additional notes and comments here and there. So we can go to the next slide, thank you. For the mixed use building, they do meet their required 10% outdoor, indoor, passive, active recreational space requirement in the form of a community room, fitness area, and resident hub, as well as the outdoor area, and then a public parklet proposed on the corner of Clinton and Henry Johnson. That's where the existing Henry Johnson mural is currently, which they're proposed to maintain. That's on the side of the building along Clinton Street. They're required to have 5 street amenities along Henry Johnson based on their frontage, 3 along First Street. Just based on the right-of-way layout and with the street amenities and the trees, we actually kind of proposed minimizing that. They had 5 bike racks and then also I think 5 street trees in the right-of-way, just like super cramped, and kind of pictured that being really busy for pedestrians. So we recommended reducing the number of bike racks and requesting a waiver, so we expect that to be requested by the applicant. And then accounting for the parklet, I think it kind of balances the amenities that they're providing. Likewise, this will require a lot line modification as it currently has 9 parcels. They're proposing an off-street parking lot as well, access via First Street. And, they're eligible for 4 parking requirement reductions, with 15 spaces required. However, the parking lot proposed has 14 spaces, so they would require a waiver. So we can discuss that or they can kind of address the site plan if they can find another space somewhere. They do meet their required indoor parking for biking with 19 indoor spaces provided, and meet the additional landscaping, screening, buffering, etc. for outdoor lighting. And then finally for the 180 Clinton, this is the demolition, which they touched on for a brownfield cleanup redevelopment. This is kind of the reverse lot line modification. It's currently one parcel. They're proposing 4 lots proposed. Again, townhouse has a requirement of 0 parking spaces and no off-street parking is proposed. However, it also kind of meets the requirement that with the lot line modifications, each lot would be less than 5,000 square feet, so it's kind of doubly exempt from off-street parking requirements. Let's see. There's no outdoor lighting or signage proposed, and without any, off-street parking, there's pretty minimal screening or buffering required. It does meet all of those additional code requirements. The demolition review, we're looking for DEC sign-off prior to issuance of a city grading permit, and this site also does require HRC review, Historic Resource Commission review, as it is in the Historic Resource Overlay. So that'll require a certificate of appropriateness. So that review is kind of simultaneous and ongoing. And a number of the other minor DPRs are also requiring that same review. So that was a quick review of those 3 major DPRs for that. Recommending no action.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Anybody? Go ahead, Shai.
I just had a question. There was a line item in there about the sidewalks are not 5 feet wide, so is it their purview to?
They are.
They are.
Or exceeding.
A quick question as well. On the houses facing Clinton, we're calling them townhouses, but they look like they're actually twins with space in between each one. Is that correct?
For, is it 333, 335? Is that,
I'm not sure if it's purple.
So Brian Dion is with SWBR, our architect, so the terminology you're asking between town.
Well, not the terminology, I just want to know what they what they look like. Are they all, they're individual buildings?
There are a few that are single, so a few that are single infills. So I believe those would have a gap between the neighboring buildings.
But these ones here are all one with
These
party
are
wall, or
Right.
We're
firewall.
sharing a wall.
Yes,
And that is the Clinton Avenue stuff.
this is the Henry Johnson.
Okay, so
So,
what do we have with Clinton Avenue?
The multiple units that are on Clinton Ave would be the same.
Would be the same.
And then there's further up and down, there's I believe 2 that would be similar, but there's just 2 buildings that are sharing a wall.
Okay.
This is where we talked about, can people get out the back of their building and does it meet egress?
Yeah.
It's still like a concern, you have the opportunity to provide a proper door versus like hopping out a window, with small kids, if there are kids there. But this is it because it's on a slope.
Yes, but then also, I believe it does meet code, and
Yeah.
the main reason why is because they're all sprinklered.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
See how this is showing as the south elevation?
It looks like the back.
back
Okay, looking at it.
as you
Okay.
go down the hill,
Yeah,
right? So you don't see it from the front.
Yeah, and the one on Clinton Avenue is done by the hill, right back there.
Right.
I have
Oh,
the
I
same
see,
thing
yeah.
behind my house, it's straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like when you go, you see the frontage of my basement, the windows are right street level. But when you go to the back, you walk out to the deck because it's such a drop
Yeah, right.
in the back. And that's like a block up from me, so that's the same side with that same drop in the back.
Yeah.
drawing that would be helpful is actually like the section with the topography, so you can understand that slope and what the implications are. Rotate it with the section. Cause it doesn't quite lend itself to the complicated site, and then we end up asking the same questions, right?
Okay, yep, we'll get that.
And let's say they do end up jumping out the back, like, do they fall off the slope, like what happens back there? We don't quite understand that.
It's not going to be a great thing.
Right. The risk.
So, like, we have the fire ladders you can get off of Amazon in the back to get out if you need to even from my main floor, it's a huge slope. It's a huge drop.
That's what I'm saying, it's a risk, and the sprinklers help, definitely, but
We'll look into
with
the,
the worst case scenario, imagine a mother or a father with their children trying to get out of the slope in the back of their house, like, what does that look like? That's a building department question, but it'd be helpful to see in the elevation site.
Excellent. Any additional questions? After everybody said no when it was our turn.
Well, you
Yeah,
know
they
how
give
we
us
go.
time.
Absolutely. Had to massage it, had to feel it.
Yeah, you know that.
Yeah, you had to breathe in the pocket,
right?
had to marinate.
No, good. So we're deferring this one. We'll see you all soon.
Can I have 2 seconds just to show them the video so they can, before they leave?
After the meeting, absolutely.
Are you gonna stick around?
I can give you my cell phone if you want to.
Yeah, and I can send it right to you.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
If that's okay.
Alright, moving on to our next issue while they work out cell phones.
I'll write it down.
This is a zoning text amendment. I don't know who's from staff is presenting. Alright, Albany's gonna present on behalf of the chief planning official, Brad Glass, amendment to the USDO to add commercial kitchens as a land use category.
Thanks, thank you. So we are looking to
Send it to you right now.
make an amendment to the USDO to add commercial food preparation to the city code. We would be defining use, adding it to the permitted use table and adding use specific standards, kind of similar to what we reviewed for the smoke shops at the prior meeting. So just some background context on kind of how we got here. We've certainly seen a rise in the number of inquiries for businesses related to commercial food preparation, so whether that be caterers, commissary kitchens, ghost kitchens, which are typically not as much necessarily like a shared kitchen, but where someone would be operating out of a space with no retail sales on premises, but really for delivery sales. So we've seen a rise in inquiries about that, and there's kind of just a lack of clarity within the existing code in that regard. So I think across the board, not just in Albany, but really everywhere with the restaurant sector has seen kind of a big shift, especially over the last 10 years, with the different online and delivery services that have popped up. Kind of there's been this change, a shift in the dynamics of the restaurant establishments. There is also a larger value placed on the shared commercial kitchen space, so that could be for food truck vendors and others as well who might not, or people who are looking to get into the restaurant industry but don't have the means or the space to prepare food. So these are all kind of the components to explain how we got here. Move to the next slide, please. So the intent of this ordinance is really just to clarify things within the code. Really right now, the only thing we have that's kind of called out is catering, which is under the land use category of dispatch services, which I think we would like to clarify that and place into its own category. So this ordinance would combine uses such as commissary kitchens, ghost kitchens, cloud kitchens, which are very similar, catering and other businesses that are primarily engaged in the commercial preparation of food, and how they would be regulated. So specifically, the proposed ordinance would do four things. It would define what the commercial food preparation is amongst making a few other definition changes. It would add commercial food preparation to the permitted use table. It would include use-specific standards, which would essentially require that if the establishment is going into a property that has a shop front where there's, transparency, there's glass, things like that, where you typically want to have more pedestrian activity, that they have to include some type of on premises sales. So whether it be like a restaurant or some type of retail sales component to it. A lot of times you see these uses in different mixed use or industrial zoning districts, but for districts where we have like highly visible shop fronts, we want to ensure there's not just these kind of blank empty spaces, even if there's something happening on the inside. And then lastly, we would be recommending changes to the minimum and maximum off-street parking to include this new use. For the next slide. So for the definitions, essentially, I won't read through all of them, but we have the commercial food preparation definition, so this would be a brand new definition here, and then anything that's underlined would be in addition to the code. Under dispatch service, the only thing that we would be recommending to change is the removal of caterers, so third to last word there, and that's because it would be placed under, a caterer would be placed under the category of commercial food preparation. And then we would also be looking to change and kind of clarify some things with what the intent is for a shop front. And that would be by adding uses that include a high percentage of transparent windows to create visual interest from the adjacent public sidewalk. Again, just kind of clarifying what we mean by a shop front, so that in those spaces where someone's looking to establish a commercial food preparation, if it's within certain zoning districts, that they would be required to provide some type of retail component to it. For the permitted use table, we'd largely be echoing a lot of the other uses that are found within the existing zoning code. So you see it's the one highlighted in yellow there. So it would be permitted in all the mixed use zoning districts, as well as the light industrial and industrial zoning districts. The requirements specifically in the, you can go to the, for the MU and E and the MU and C zoning districts, it would be permitted, but if it was, if the uses exceed a certain amount of square footage, a conditional use permit is needed. So in the mixed use neighborhood edge district, if it was over 3,000 square feet, a conditional use permit would be required. And for the MU and C, if it was over 5,000 square feet, a conditional use permit would be required. And that's a provision that exists for other uses within the zoning codes. We kind of just be copying that from similar types of uses. So what you see here on this map is everything in blue is the areas that would be permitted. You can see there's a lot of industrial, larger sites, some campus sites, as well as a lot of state-owned property. If you look at the areas that are in red and orange on the map, those are the MU and E and MU and C zoning districts. So again, those would still permit this commercial food preparation, but would require a conditional use permit if they were to exceed square footage. As for the use specific standard, we would propose wording as such, where this use occupies a shopfront space in the MUNE through the MUFM district, it must contain a food service or retail component for on-site sales. Here we've really just emulated what we found in other zoning codes that have adopted similar regulations. Next slide. And then lastly, for the parking requirements, it is a bit different from some of the other uses within the same general category. So the category that commercial food preparation would be that we're proposing it be under is office and services. However, it's quite different from some of the other uses you see here. Based on our research, we're proposing that one space per 750 square feet of net leasable area be required, and that the maximum number be 1 per 550 square feet of net leasable area. I believe that's it. If there's any questions from any board members?
Why on the parking, was it so varied? Are we not anticipating the catering function with possible even large vehicles needing to be there if there are multi-tenants, that the parking might not be sufficient?
So from what we've seen so far, I mean, there does not seem to be a large traffic impact except for a couple very large cities like San Francisco and a few areas there, but for the most part, it doesn't seem to be very high traffic. It's kind of a shared space, also just depending on where it's located, so if it's in more of a mixed use commercial area, there's better means of getting there. In terms of the loading services, there's a provision in the code already, but it's really only triggered once the use exceeds 25,000 square feet. So for the most part, they kind of make do with the space they have. We have a lot of people who operate smaller catering businesses already in the city, and we haven't encountered any issues in terms of the traffic or parking needs, so we don't want to really overregulate or mandate that they have a certain number of parking spaces if it's not needed.
Have we seen, we're anticipating applications in this space, and have we had any nibbles yet?
We have one person who's inquired very specifically about a property. They haven't submitted anything as of yet formally, but we've discussed, what the city was potentially looking to do and trying to better understand what they're proposing to get a sense of what the different business enterprises will look to do to make sure we're not creating a definition that doesn't actually apply.
Well, the pool hall on Central, isn't that being converted into this sort of thing?
Central.
Your Home Depot, across from Home Depot. Yeah.
I'm not aware actually. I can certainly check that out.
There was a case that was brought before us.
Okay.
I was very bummed out that it was pool hall.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes it's kind of difficult to put them into a category before we have something like this, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure on the details of that one, but we probably had to split up some of the different uses or components of it. Like catering, for example, where we put it under dispatch because people can come and go, where it probably belongs in a separate category from some of those other uses like taxi cabs.
There was a big article, I think, in the Sunday New York Times about this issue down in New York City, and not just for food, but for general package delivery, like Amazon type companies were renting out storefronts and closing all the windows off and sort of weird thing inside.
Yeah, I mean, I don't foresee, or at least as of yet, we haven't seen any or much interest in properties that are like prominently located in the downtown that would be vacating all the, beautiful storefronts or anything like that, so I don't think that's not something we would expect, but the provision in this for the use specific standard would kind of prevent that, where they have to provide, something so that there's a presence and they can't just board up the windows and walls.
Right.
Is the requirement to have, if they're in a storefront, to have some retail or on-site sale available? Is there any percentage of their business that it has to make up, or just as long as they're selling, their homemade salsa or coffee blend or whatever, is there any specificity?
Yeah, it's not, there's no percentage or floor area or anything like that that's specified. I think it's just very difficult to kind of nail down what that would be, and I think we'd probably run into the issue of having to then grant lots of waivers or variances. I think that could possibly be a consideration, maybe down the road as we get a better understanding of it, but the general intent is that they'd be utilizing whatever shop front currently exists in that space.
I can imagine in the neighborhood that I live in, people already really struggle with Grubhub and those kinds of deliveries and how people double park everywhere. I imagine something to consider with can be done in a house?
This specific definition would categorize things in such a manner where it wouldn't be allowed in the residential zoning districts.
Okay.
I guess if you have a building that has some residential component to it in one of the other commercial or mixed use zoning districts,
That's where
you could do it there, but
you could do it.
yeah. Might run into some other constraints, but yeah.
Yeah. Like, so couldn't it be like my grandmother's house that's like starting a catering business?
So there's provisions in the code now under, there's a professional office and then there's home, I believe it's home occupations. And that specifies, it specifies a lot of things you can and cannot do, and
Yeah.
I believe most of this would fall under you cannot do this.
Right.
Or at least, for some of the home occupations, you can't occupy more than, I forget what the number is, but a fairly small amount of square footage, and you can't have people essentially coming to that location to pick things up. So sometimes people do have like a small business at their house where they might be making something on like a small scale and selling it, but they're bringing it to another establishment to sell it as opposed to selling it out of their house.
Alright, well, is there a motion for a favorable recommendation to the common council for the zoning text amendments?
So moved.
Moved by Rachel, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Rachel and seconded by Martin to advance a favorable recommendation to the common council for the zoning text amendments presented by our chief planning officer, Brad Glass. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Thank you. On to our meeting agenda. Have a development plan review that we will need to discuss secret on. This is for 120 Industrial Park, and the applicant is Matson Construction Services LLC in here. The proposal is for construction of a 16,878 square foot addition to an existing warehouse with 2 additional loading docks. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Brian Sipperly with Verity Engineering. As you mentioned, we represent the sponsor, who is Sarkwire Corporation via Matson Construction Services. The proposal that the applicant is looking to undertake is to put on a roughly 17,000 square foot warehouse addition keyed onto the east wall of the existing building. The existing site is about 4 acres. Thank you very much. I was just gonna bring the board into where it is. So the site on the left image there with the star on it is the current roof of the facility. That's a roughly 50,000 square foot existing built facility. So the facility is principally developed with parking along the east side, access and loading to the south of the building, some street frontage and landscaping along the Industrial Park Road. The parcel itself, although not highlighted on this photo here, has 3 road frontages, so it's gonna have frontage on Waterville Ave, it's gonna have frontage on Commerce Ave, as well as Industrial Park Road, thank you. So Waterville being on the left of the screen, Commerce being on the bottom of the screen, Industrial being on the north of the screen. So we have 3 frontages. Building is generally developed biased towards the north part of the site, as you can see there. The site itself is zoned light industrial, so it's the I-1 zone. The abutters, as you guys know, around this area are generally industrial and some commercial uses. The slide before you gave a good indication of where the zoning line, we're wholly within the LI zone. We have some adjacent zones, but definitely some elbow room between right of ways between those zoning boundaries there as well. We do, if you want to jump to the survey, if you could, which would make it the next screen existing condition, oh, might have been back a number of slides, it was the survey we looked at, right there. I do wanna just highlight that the site is challenging from one perspective, starting from, let's just say the northwest side, bisecting the parcel going in the southeast direction. We've got a 66-foot wide easement. That easement contains utilities, it contains portions of the Patron Creek Brickyard Sewer, some other utilities as well that belong to the city, so it's a challenging area. And that's generally speaking what's on the site. No stormwater management that exists on the site. It has closed drainage. The topography is generally all developed, say west, and in the undeveloped portion in the bottom left is truly undeveloped, and it's generally matching the grades and blending the grades from Waterville and the Commerce intersections quite higher than the finished floor of Sarkwire. So if you want to jump to the proposed additional, bring it through some highlights of that, thank you very much. So again, we've got a 17,000 square foot addition colored in, I guess, orangish beige there on the right. So it's, again, I indicate it's going to be kind of keyed on to that west or to the east axis of the building. The site presently has 31 spaces. The proposal with the building addition would bring it just shy of 68,000 total square feet. In order to put the building addition where it is, we need to relocate the parking, and that relocated parking is shown in the southwest area of the site. That is the generally undeveloped portion of the current site today. The requirement is going to be for I'm aware of the comment about new parking required for the new building. The applicant wanted to generally make the site parking or at least zoning compliant, so we would need 68 parking spaces. We receive, the site is eligible for a 13 space credit for on-street parking on the industrial sides, all street sides, leaving 55 spaces required. We have space for 55 spaces on site. However, I do want to point out to the board that 16 of those spaces are proposed to be banked, and that is as a request of the user. They don't have that many employees. They don't plan to, even with this building addition, have that number of employees. They'd like to be zoning compliant, prove to the board through stormwater management planning, grading, drainage, that it can work such that if there is a need in the future, they'd have the ability, already be worked out under the SWIP, to go in and construct those additional 16 spaces, not to come back and see this board for something as small as that. To get this entire development project done, it will disturb certainly over a quarter acre, which is a certain threshold in the city for stormwater management, and likely over an acre, which would then just trigger the New York State speedies permit. So the applicant will be seeking coverage under either one of those permits to disturb the area to make way for the site improvements. We didn't talk about utilities, but the site is served with municipal sewer and water. There are no changes to the utilities proposed for this addition. They've got a lot of stuff packed in this building, and they do a lot of manufacturing, so they need to expand. Right now, the current single loading area on the side, which will be shown appended to the brown existing facility, that shares incoming and outgoing materials. The darker brown addition to, let's just call it at the bottom of the buildings, a different color brown. That was a building addition that was put on a number of years ago. That houses both incoming and outgoing materials, and it's just like a beehive. It shouldn't be like that. So what they really want to do with this is streamline operations on the inside, allow some more room for manufacturing and elbow space. Incoming materials would stay on the left loading, or what's called the west side. Finished good inventory would also be stored in the new warehouse, and then shipping of that finished good would be logically located in that building as well, keeping those two functions separate. So back to utilities, unchanged at the moment. TBD, depending upon building construction, fire flows, and anything that may be required. We'll certainly get into that as time comes. The site has two principal access points, one on Industrial Park Road, one on Commerce. Per this plan, neither one of those is proposed to change, and neither is getting increased in size. And just want to highlight too, there's not many changes going on the Industrial Park Road side. There are some mature plantings that are there, and some tree, I don't want to call them tree boxes, or tree barrels, if you will, concrete planted barrels. Those are expected to remain. We are in receipt of the staff comments, and a number of them don't appear like they can't be met with this development plan. I talked with planning earlier, just to wrap this up, we're looking for more of a board feedback on the concept of what the proposal is. We are aware of all of the other requirements for your purview, lighting, landscaping, the rest of the conformance to the USDO, but before we began hard engineering and a lot of the swift preparation for things, we wanted to make sure we were comfortable, introduce the project to this board and get some feedback. So with that being said, I'll hand it over back to the board for any questions. Thank you.
Let's see, I have one question, which is whether or not you're gonna need to add retaining walls next to Water Leak and Commerce, I think it is there because of the partnership close with the.
Great.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's a great question, but please continue.
No, that was.
Oh yeah, great question. The question was about retaining walls. If we want to jump back to the site plan, I'll just highlight where we believe there would be some grade challenges and where those would be. It may be easier to kind of look to the screen, or does somebody have a mouse? Well, so the question from Member Hull was, are there going to be retaining walls to accomplish this? And the answer is yes, there will be some retaining walls along Water and Commerce. Height, unknown until we get a grading plan. There are a number of constraints. If you look back at historical aerial imagery, there was obviously rail lines, other buildings. We've done some field testing due diligence in that open area, and there truly is a slab remaining from some older buildings. We're working through with the contractor on the best way to solve it. We may try to leave it in place, treat it like a design constraint, come up with the parking lot and elevation, say about 4 feet. Stormwater management would be used in that structure as we come up and fill. And so that would lessen the height of the retaining walls if we're trying to do that. What it does do is it creates a challenge along the northern part of Waterville and the CDTA lot line. So there may be, and you wouldn't see it here with grading because we don't have the grading here. But we do expect potential retaining walls along there to deal with that grade. But more to be worked out when we're into that phase of the project. Rob, that answer your question?
You mentioned earlier, and I'm not sure if I'm visualizing correctly, but you said there was a portion of the property that I think you used the term a difficult area because there's underground.
Yes.
So where you're planning to put the additional parking, is that over that area?
Yeah, can I walk up and just point for you guys? Great. I'll use my pen, but I won't touch the TV. Thank you. So let's go back to the survey if you can, because there's a lot going on. Okay, here's the easement, 66 foot wide, goes like this, turns, goes along Commerce Ave. Obviously the stream daylight's further on down to the east here. As the survey would reveal, we've got a brick arch sewer, location unknown. This is a real tough area. Even a surveyor who's very, very, very experienced in this area still has a tough time. No one's raising their hand to go uncover it and put a survey rod on it either. Everyone's in favor of kind of leaving it where it is. The slab that we've uncovered is generally in this area, okay? Are portions of it in the easement? Sure, we don't know. But the parking would be above that, okay? So that's another reason we don't want to get into that. We had a technical review committee meeting where I'd love to tie into that with stormwater, but it'd be very, very difficult. No one wants to raise their hand and be the one to do it. Nor is it the city's desire to also kind of unearth that and deal with it. So I hope that helps, but that's the difficult area of this site. Maybe that's why there's always been kind of a no man's land of building there, grade changes, but until now it hasn't needed to be developed. So that area of the site.
So we're expecting increased traffic, and the client wants more traffic, correct?
No, so this isn't intended, so if we back up to kind of what data we would use, ITE trip gen for code 150, which is warehouse. That would say for the entire building, we're 32 to 35 trips per day, AM, PM, small range. Forget what that book says about which way they turn. Generally speaking, most of the industry is gonna head out towards the arterials in this area. So the trip distribution will certainly be weighted in most of the direction the trucks are going. But this isn't really about expanding capacity and shipping. It is about, I'm sure they'd welcome a site visit. A lot of bumping of elbows and a little bit of a non-logical layout in terms of flow of the industrial space and the use on the inside. So it's more that related to that.
where are you in relationship to the daycare?
We are going to be immediately to the west of them, so the building that is shown right there, the portion of the building to the east is going to be the portion of 35 Commerce that contains the daycare.
Right, and then there's a city school district building too, right?
That's across the street.
Across the street.
Hold on, help me. Marvis Daycare is currently in this building as well?
No, so the building that, to the very far of this page there, you see just a 3 lines of a building facade wall.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
That's that's 35 Commerce, that's a larger building, and the western side of that building, which would be closest to our side on here, contains that daycare use. Along that eastern facade of that building, there are proposed elevations in the packet. There's nothing but an egress door, no windows, no doors, no noise, would generally face that, there you go, thank you.
Any additional comments from the board before we go to staff?
Just brief staff notes, as Brian mentioned, it is kind of an initial overview, so we're expecting a more kind of robust, expanded, revised plan set. They did previously receive a waiver from the planning board, or maybe chief planning official at the time in 2021 for the current parking being located behind the front wall plane. So the chief planning official, Brad Glass, will need to make a determination whether that applies to the proposed new off-street parking. So I think we'll just kind of need to work through that as we move forward. And I think we'll obviously need to kind of work through the landscaping and buffering as you know, kind of develops as far as the retention wall and any kind of screening and buffering along those 3 different street frontages. We did get a couple review comments from water department. As we said, it did go before the technical review committee, so we did also get some initial review comments from that, especially pertaining to the Patroon Creek and sewer easement, so we can kind of continue to develop that and get a more robust plan set for you guys sometime soon. So that's the initial comments. The recommended action is just to classify it as an unlisted action. We don't anticipate coordinator review under seeker, so it's just kind of it's almost a no action really.
Thank you for that. Is there a motion from the board on seeker to determine us as the lead agency?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Larissa, seconded by Shadi to declare planning board as lead agency for seeker. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carried.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, have a good evening, everybody.
Next up is development plan review for 280 Mount Hope Drive. Applicant is BBL Construction Services, represented by Hirschberg. Zoning district is mixed use campus institutions, the conversion of 3 existing single-story buildings totaling 105,680 square feet to a self-storage space, and construction of 10 additional new buildings varying in size from 2,000 square feet to 4,200 square feet, for a total of 30,200 square feet.
Yeah, my name is Nick Daniels with Hirschberg and Hirschberg. We're here tonight for the self-storage units at 280 Mount Hope Drive. Next slide, please. This project is currently zoned MUCH. We went through the rezoning process and we had this rezoned from MUCI to MUCH. Here's a current site layout. access from the site remains as is, and you can see the proposed self-storage units to the right. The site slopes from west to east toward the proposed stormwater basin system in the southeast corner. We have a series of catch basins to collect all this drainage. No new water service or sewer connections are proposed. And we will be providing lighting, landscaping, and visual site features. Just a quick slide of the site lighting. Most of it is wall packs around each of the units. There are some light poles over the parking areas to the west, but the majority of it are wall packs on the units themselves. Just a view of the existing landscaping in relation to the proposed location. To the corners of the units from Mount Hope Drive, there's about, I think it says 313 feet. My eyes are kind of bad. But there's an extensive buffer, 318 feet, so that's almost, a football field away from that point, and there's some extensive landscaping in that area. And I believe we are underwaiting a tree survey to be completed, so we'll see which areas along the property line will need to be infilled with more screening. And here's just a view of just a sample of what the units will look like. And I believe that's the last slide, so I can open any questions you may have.
Will the converted buildings also be self-storage? Or just in the business?
Yes.
Any additional questions from staff? Please, staff. We have public comments already. Terminal Ricks.
Good evening, how's everybody doing?
All is well. I didn't have a chance possibly before you came in to relay the protocols for public comment. We welcome your public comment. We ask that you first state your name, your address, and we have a 3-minute limit for public comment. And then we might have any questions for you as a board, but we'll look forward to.
Alright, my name is Donnell Riggs. I live at 163 Fifth Ave in Troy. I'm a longtime resident of Albany and down at 158 F3rd Avenue, down in the Creighton Stories. I'm also the president for Albany Pop Warner, and I run Crown Elite Sports that's located over at the Hoffman Park, and we work out at Bleecker Stadium. So I just had comments on and concerns about the project as I was in talks with actually trying to purchase the building to do sports, to open up a sports complex. I don't know if you guys see the problem that's going on in the community or within the city of Albany, where we got girls flag football, we got all of these high schools, elementary schools and middle schools with no green fields for these kids to play on. With the sports at the intensity that it is for the youth in the city, there's really no place for them to go indoor or outdoor. Like, I don't understand why there's not a sports complex in the city of Albany. We got one in Colony and Aframs. I just think there needs to be more options, and that's a perfect location to do it, right there in the neighborhood on the south end, where our program holds over 300 kids annually between football and cheerleading, and we're stuck right there on Little Hoffman Foley Field. So I was actually talking with Jonathan Jones, the recreation, commissioner, about, trying to do a sports complex. It's probably a little bit over his head. So I just actually went back to look at the building, because I've been frequenting the building for months, and when I seen that note posted, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get to this meeting. If you don't have the information, you don't know. So I don't think the word in the community is out enough that these meetings are being held. So I can be the voice of reasoning for us to start coming to these meetings, to start learning the process of getting some motion or some things going in the community for the youth. And it's not, and it could be a growing aspect for adults too. You know, I bring some great opportunities to the city. I don't know if you guys pay attention enough or seen that I do NFL camps. I had superstar wide receiver Tyreek Hill come to town 3 years in a row. He's coming back. He'll be back June 16th. We're going to be at Aframs. I partner with Major League Baseball for June 15th. I'm doing the pitch hit and run event. I'm also the only youth organization in the state of New York to house all major sports on the youth level, which is NFL flag, Major League Baseball, MLS soccer, go, lacrosse, you name it. Every major sport, I host it. I hold camps and I do training for all youth, ages 2 to 17. And we're just looking for a home, and you know, not just for my organization, but for children of the community. And that building with the 4 acres of land that comes with it, I understand that the renovation of the building will be a big project. It's a full restoration with the fire and stuff that happened in the building previously, but I think that would be a perfect spot, being that Dome Stewart is no longer available. That land, which sold like a year ago, 2 years ago. So just, you know, I figured that'd be some words.
Well, thank you for your comment, duly noted. I think our first, we're not determining the project today, it's more about lead agency and unlisted action on, it's called the State Environmental Quality Review Act. But you should pay attention, newspapers and things like that. Obviously, the applicant is here, somebody for you to talk to. Yeah, absolutely, thank you for your participation.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
All right, do we do staff comments? Not yet. Do we have any comments? I didn't have any questions.
Just a brief overview, there was a previous lot line adjustment last spring, and as we know, there was a zoning map amendment brought by the applicant, that was reviewed by the planning board, with positive recommendation to common council in December to rezone the entirety of the parcel from mixed-use campus institutional to mixed-use highway. So now it is all MUCH. Self-storage facility use specific standard for permanent screening is required in this case, due to the site being adjacent to residential zoning district. So we expect compliance with that requirement. I think mentioned that the street tree survey or the tree survey would be done. So we'll look for that in the future resubmission. I think there's additional notes on the next slide. A trip generation assessment was provided by the applicant in February, which noted that self-storage facilities have one of the lowest generating commercial land uses. And VHB, the provider of the trip generation assessment, estimated that about 90% of the traffic will travel to and from the site via Southern Boulevard or 9W. Other aspects of the site plan may need either some adjustments to the site plan and or waivers, so we'll need to look at that a little bit closer. Due to the zoning map amendment, I think we kind of paused the site plan review, so we haven't really looked at it too closely since February, so I think we've kind of gotten more feedback from other departments recently, so we'll be kind of jumping back into the department review and sending those comments back over. So we'll need to look closer at the sidewalk, street frontage amenities, right-of-way access width, interior walkways for pedestrian access requirements. And currently the proposal does not include signage, but if that is included for future, self-storage, then that should be included. And as mentioned, there's ongoing review, so we can expect revised submission soon by the applicant. And as mentioned, the recommended action is to classify it as unlisted under C.
Alright, is there a motion to classify this project as an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act? Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Martin, second by Vanessa to classify this as unlisted action under SEQA. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We have one more. Kind of. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Looks like they withdrew the last one.
So, application for development plan review 0150 has withdrawn. Per the applicant's request, following their review of the planning staff's recommendations and the comments from the city departments, they will be proceeding with the previously approved site plans, including the sidewalks.
Love hearing that.
Alright. So is there any other business that we need to conduct here tonight? We get it right tonight? Alright. Hearing on the business, without objection, we can adjourn the meeting. Any objections? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
7:23.
Well done.